about 10 minutes as well from our side. Right, so just a quick introduction to who I am. So I'm Imad Malik, so I'm the Director of ERP Products at Catalyst. So I've developed bottle ERP in conjunction with our distillery customers. So I lead the implementation and the general development of bottle ERP itself. Don't know if you want to go around and just do quick intros, please.
Sure, I'm Martin Leonard. I'm Operations Director. So the bit I'm interested in, as are the rest of the team there, because they're all operations, is so the demand planning, production planning side. I mean, we're taking the finance side as something that NetSuite can do anyway. But the really interesting bit is the bulk stock side, and cask management. Although I'm sure Debajit, he can introduce himself. He'll be interested in the customer service side of NetSuite, and you in more of the demand planning, production planning. Cool. Sorry, I'm doing introductions for you. On you go.
Yes, so I'm the operations project manager. Mostly deal with the customer side of it. So sales, logistics, sales, movement, any duty, customer sides.
Hi, Imad. So I'm an operations manager. So I mostly deal more with sort of production planning, sort of dry goods management, inventory management, sort of supply chain stuff as well. So that'd be kind of more the sort of side of things that I'd be interested in.
Cool, perfect.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm the whiskey operations manager. So I handle everything to do from new make spirit through to bottle, so warehousing, etc. as well.
Perfect. Thank you for the intros. So unless you've got any other points you want to cover, we'll go straight to the 3 questions I have from last week's session, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. So the first question I was given was storage costs per space in warehouse. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Yeah, of course. So we have multiple third-party warehouses that we currently use. So, for instance, we use 20 different warehouses with 87% of our stock at one, and the remainder spread across the rest of the warehouses. They all have different rates depending on, obviously, the supplier, the number of casks we have at that site, etc. So it would be more of an understanding of how we can accrue for the warehousing costs at each one of those sites. So it could go from 33 pence per cask per week all the way up to 60 pence per cask per week, depending on the location.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So very similar to how you can charge for storage. If you're storing casks for people, you can also get charged for storage as well. And next we can deal with that. You would set up very much like on the customer side, a schedule that says we're getting charged per cask, this amount, daily, weekly, bi-weekly, depends what schedule you're set up at and how much you're getting set up at. And then what it will do is it will add that based on it depends on the setup, but the default is every week it'll run a background process that will then add the storage element to the cost of the actual cask itself. Okay. So it'll roll it up automatically. What it will also do then is it will give you a purchase order, because it'll expect an invoice to come in from the vendor at some point that you can then raise the bill against. So if there is a variance, you can then also check the variance.
Right, so the system would be able to basically help with the reconciliation of the invoices. Is there a three-way match system that you... Yeah.
So you've got an option to do either 2-way, 3-way, depending on how you want to do it. It can do exchange rates, quantity, rate. I think there's a fourth, but I can never remember what it is. And then you can also put tolerances either at the entire group level, location, vendor item level, and then it'll set approvals off the back of that.
Perfect. Yeah, because one of the things that we have is we usually get invoiced either on a 6-monthly basis or a yearly basis on the warehousing, depending on the volume of casks. But we also get invoiced at the end of the month for any casks that we removed from that warehouse. At that point, is there a way of generating a purchase order for the casks that have been removed, essentially, accruing for the costs that they have warehoused a year till then as well? Yeah.
To date, yeah. You can put an end date on it, yeah, and then that will then basically trigger it to generate early.
No, thank you.
Does that answer that question? Any other points on that?
No, that's okay.
Cool. Question 2, when cash is depreciated off of a fixed asset, can the value go into the liquid? So if you take £1 off the cask, can it go into the liquid instead? So in theory, yes, it can. I want to know why you'd want to do that because I've not come across any other distillery wanting to do that. Why would you want the depreciated value of cask going into the liquid instead?
Sorry, I should have taken a bite of a sandwich at that point. I think it was more
Sorry.
our finance team were quite keen that they could actually track the change in fixed asset, so the depreciation cash value, but reflect that in the value of the spirit in the sense that that's where it's going. It's being used to mature that spirit. It's
Yeah.
added to the value of that liquid. So, is there a way we can reflect that in the value of the liquid?
There is a way to do it, standard as part of fixed assets. It's just not something we've been asked for, but you can do it. It was just a question of why, but that's perfectly fine. If you want to take that value, take it off your fixed asset register, add it to your inventory asset register, that's not a problem. It can be added at the cask level. And what it'll do, as you basically run the depreciation, it'll generate an adjustment to just adjust the cost to the correct amount to take into account the depreciation that was done.
Yeah, perfect. Because we were thinking about whether we would do that on a monthly basis or 6 monthly basis of the depreciation. Because for instance, a cask is an asset, we depreciate that over 10 years.
Yeah.
So we have quite a stable depreciation across the board. So whether we do as an ongoing kind of per day or per month or per 6 months, but it's good to know that we can in fact do that with yourself.
Yeah, you would link it in, from my point of view, the easiest way would possibly be just to link it into the standard depreciation. So if you're depreciating every month evenly, then as soon as that depreciation gets triggered, another process will then trigger the cost increase on the liquid itself. So that it works
And
in
is this
tandem.
a automated process, or do we have to do the process every time? Or like
So-
we can just forget about it and it'll keep
No, you
depreciating,
can have it.
depreciating.
Your choice. Your
Okay.
choice. So the depreciation, to actually trigger the depreciation, it's part of the month-end closure. You would do that yourself, but that would then trigger the second process, which would actually increase the liquid value
That's
itself.
great. Would save a lot of hassle for us.
Cool. Third one, can we generate certificates against products? What sort of certificates would you want? What are you looking for? What do you have?
So this is not a big-ish point, but then there are certain, I think, like trade documentations. So like UR1 certificate of origin or certificate of age. So this is certificate of age is very common with whiskey. So is these documents now what I have to do is manually write it or manually create it? Is these linked, or do we have templates that basically link into the government portals, or if we have physical documents that we just need to write, do we have templates that we can just input the products and the age and it automatically pulls the data and I can print it off?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. So the answer broadly is yes, you can. So certificate of age, certificate of origin, you can generate them. Other documents like delivery orders, if you do delivery orders, commercial invoices, all these documents are standard documents that are part of the ERP.
Okay.
It comes down to how far do you want to take it, what level of system automation do you want, and what level of control do you want to put your information in as well. It doesn't link to HMRC's portal, but there are templates for it all.
Okay, that's good.
And just to add to that, Imad, is there somewhere on the system like a sort of document type designer where we can amend or create our own templates for documents as well as the standard templates?
Yeah, so if anybody knows HTML, CSS, it's a basically it's a web code editor. You just do it directly in there, has a little live preview, and you can see your changes as you do it.
Okay, perfect.
Funny question over here. Do you have a ChatGPT link in which basically, if I don't know HTML, I can ask ChatGPT to create this and it writes the HTML code and everything?
Unfortunately not. So NetSuite does have AI capabilities. It hasn't taken it that far yet, but they are building it out.
Their own company.
Okay.
But yeah, eventually it'll be replacing people, I'm sure.
No worries.
Cool. So those are the 3 questions. Any other questions? What else are you interested in knowing as part of this call? It's kind of over to you guys of what you want to see, what you want to know, what was left unsaid on the last call.
One thing that will actually help would be basically, so from the creation of liquid to merging of, like, we take one cask as example, from the creation of liquid to merging with the wood to production of the production stage, and then finally moving it to our warehouse and all the warehousing cost going through, and then finally getting it sold. So the entire step with just one product or like one cask, so it'll be easier to understand, go through the flow and how long each process takes. That'll be actually helpful. Yeah.
Okay, so we can make some spirit, fill it into a cask, I suppose, and then go from there. Okay, let's see how far we can take that, and then we go from there. Give me 2 seconds. Let me load something up.
Matt, I might have been discussing Friday, but have you got a reference site that we can speak to or see the system working?
I think somebody's asked for that, and Rob's dealing with that request currently. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Okay, can you let me know when you see my screen? So a little bit to
Yeah.
move things around.
Yep, I can see that.
Perfect. Okay, so broadly speaking, when you're talking about spirit production to start with, there's 2 ways you can do it with bottle ERP. You can keep it super simple and just do, I'm tracking the last element of the spirit, or I can go a bit more complex and I can track the mashing, the milling, the malting, the fermentation. I can track all those stages. Depends how far you want to go with it, right? I'll show you a bit of both, and then you get an idea of how it works. So what I've got is a work order. A work order is basically a production order in NetSuite. So when you want to produce something, do something, a liquid, a bottling, whatever it might be, you create a work order. So I've picked a product that I've got as my demo product, Whiskey 99. It has a recipe that's been selected, and I've said I want to do a spirit production. It's then giving me the guide to follow, depending on this, what I want to do. So I'm just going to say where I want to produce it, and generally how much LPA do I want to produce as such. And I can keep it small, I can keep it big, depending on if I'm filling a spirit tank, or let's say you're making a gin product. I don't know if you guys make gin and you're going straight to an IBC. You can pick and choose basically how you want to do it. What I'll do is I'll make a small amount, but then I'll show you the process anyway. That's gonna be too much actually. Let's just do a smaller amount. Small amount. That'll do. Okay, so I'm gonna put it into an IBC because I don't think I've got any spirit tankers in this demo account, but it'll still show you the general process as it goes. And this is just an anticipated, this is what I plan to try and make. This is not what I'm actually going to make. When you do the actual, it'll then compare against both. And you're also then saying what you anticipate from a production point of view, your strength of your product will be once you're done. You're then specifying where is it going. So if it's a gin product, is it going into an IBC? If it's a whiskey product, is it going to your spirit tank? Is it going straight into a tanker? Where's the end result? It doesn't have to be the cask. It's just, if it's bulk liquid, where's the bulk liquid ending up? And if any of this doesn't make sense, please feel free to stop me, or if I'm going too quick on any point, feel free to stop me. For now, because I don't think I have any spirit tanks, I'm just going to select an IBC, but it could be a spirit tank, could be a tanker, doesn't really matter as such. They're just fixed assets that we're creating to manage that type of transaction.
Do we manage the IBCs? So basically so if we have a set number of IBCs, do we manage in the warehouse? Okay. And if it is done in, I think I asked the same question, so no worries. I remember the answer for the other question. Yeah, it's fine. We can move on.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so yeah, now I've saved it down. I've got a work order number that I've set up. The guide is slightly changed, but all the information is preset. The first thing is telling me there's a missing batch number. So I don't know if this was covered on Friday or not, but one of the key things with Bottle ERP you get is Domesco. It's a mobile solution that you would put on a phone, tablet, whatever it might be, that allows you to do a lot of these processes on the go. One of the key things with that is the ability to, let me just move this part out of the way, is the ability to generate barcodes and generate labels from the system as well. As part of production, we generate or help you generate the actual batch for the liquid that you're producing. And that batch will then follow that liquid through its entire lifetime, whatever it might be. So based on the rules that I've set up, this is the batch that is generated automatically. And then that's based on a set of rules that I've set up in the system. I can then print that off and get an actual label to stick on the IBC, to stick on the cask, to stick it on the spirit tank, whatever it might be, that goes along with it. That then gives me a barcode to scan, so it reduces the manual input that people have to do. That's also true for other parts of the system. So there's barcode printing for the items themselves, so just bottles, whatever it might be, the bays, so bins, pallets, whatever you want to call it, and then the fixed assets themselves, IBCs, casks, and any other asset as well. And the idea is, where possible, you're scanning something instead of manually typing it in to reduce the amount of manual input people have to do.
Sorry, just 2
questions?
seconds. So see if a failed cask would essentially have two tickets on it,
barcodes,
have the fixed asset at plus whatever the sort of batch is as well. Oh, perfect. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, so you have the choice of what to do. So you can either have two, one for the fixed asset and one for the batch, or you can have one which has the fixed asset and the batch on, and it has both barcodes on it to choose.
Apologies for jumping in. I'm sure this was probably
cool.
covered previously, but I missed the call last week. In terms of the fixed asset tracking, I take it you can track, the historical contents of what's been filled into them before. You can, say, you can say, oh, we've had this IBC for 10 years. It's time to scrap it. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Precisely. So you'll see this history button here. So that history basically gives you access to that. I think this is a new IBC, so it'll probably be empty. Yeah, rubbish example. Let's make a slight deviation just to answer that question. So I'm going to go to one of our visual screens that basically shows you your filled casks containers in the system. So that we represent. If I just skip to an asset, I don't know if this was covered or not on Friday, but we do track the assets as proper assets, and we track the liquid separately together, so that they're linked. But what we then do off the back of that is we are tracking the history against each one as well. So on my asset record, I can attach a photo. I can say if it's got a condition. Is it a part of a larger parcel? So I don't know how many casks you guys have, but if, let's say you've filled 800 casks from one spirit production, you can track it under one larger parcel number, and then do regauges at the parcel level and track it at the parcel level instead, if you wanted to. And those parcels are automatically generated by the system as needed. But just to go back and answer the question that you had around tracking history and things like that, the answer is yes. You can track it at the fixed asset level. So in this case, I can see that this was purchased on this day. This was the item that this came in with. This was the purchase order, and these were the values. If it was production, I would see consumption. If it was production to produce it, I'd see production, samples, regauges, re-racking. You see all of it. And if it's had 3 or 4 different items in it with over its lifetime, it will show you that as well, and it'll show you number of fills. And then if you get to the part where actually you go, I need to kind of dispose of this, there's a disposal process as well. And that's at the asset level, but you can also do it at the liquid level. You have the history button there as well that gives you the history just for the liquid. In this case, they're the same history because it's never moved, but it gives you hopefully an idea.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, so in terms of my work order, I've got 2 options now. So my demo account has both options activated because I need both options activated to show you the ability to do it. But I have the option to keep it super simple and just go straight to my final spirit, and I'll show you that first. And I also have the ability to go a bit more complex and track the individual stages. So what you have the ability to do is you have the ability to set up what is a routing. So what are the steps to produce your liquid? Do you do everything in that process, or do you start at the fermentation stage and somebody else does your mashing and your milling? Or do you malt it as well? What do you do in-house kind of thing? Or do you none of it, and all you do is you get someone else to make the liquid, and then you fill it in casks? You have the choice. But what you're doing is you're setting up a routing. You're matching it to a product you're making, and you're saying, these are the steps that we have. So we do mill, mash, fermentation, etc. What that then does is if I go back to my work order, next under the items, I have my production operations, which is a mimic of exactly each one of those. And each one of those has a stage to it. So, right? What I can do is I can then choose what information do I want to capture at each stage. So what do I want to capture at the milling stage in this case? What do I want to capture at the mashing stage? And if I open up one of these records as a starting point, in this example, I've got timings that I can track. I can track the husk, the grist, the tonnage that was used. Comparably, if I go to the mashing in my example that I've set up, I can track my mashing information. I can track the total duration. If I save this down, I can also then track the waters that I've put in, how much water I did put in, when did I put it in, etc., the spout temperature. But you don't stop there. You can add more fields. You can change the fields. You can say, I don't want to track that, but I do want to track this instead. And it's completely flexible. But what this allows you to do is it allows you to take it onto the handheld and allows you to fill it in on there, because we would expect your distillers to be filling the handheld in, not really using NetSuite directly and using Domesco. I'll give you guys a choice now on how you want to see this. Do you want me to split off and show you Domesco now, or do you want me to just finish this production and do that? What would be best for you guys?
Will we just continue on?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll show you Domesco in a minute. Not a problem. So if I just do a simple spirit production, just say I want to do a single stage, and in my account, I've given myself the ability to do complex and simple in the same way. Obviously, in a proper account, you wouldn't have the ability to do that. It'd be one or the other. But if I'm going for simple, all I'm doing is I'm confirming, okay, what have I produced? Is it still going into the vessel that I said it's going to go into? So in this case, the ABC. Have I produced that much LPA? Have I produced at that ABV? What was my consumption of units, etc.? And then I'm basically confirming what have I made. And again, you can do this on the handheld, or you can do it in NetSuite as I'm showing you now. If we just give it a second to load. That down. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to confirm the values that I've put in. And we've got a couple of optional fields around EMCS and TCF. Again, the values that you track, if you do want to capture the temperature control factor, you do want to track gravities, you do want to track other ABV loss, whatever it might be, you can track these pieces of information. And because it's the simple way, I can also track any byproducts. So if you're not reusing the byproducts constantly as part of the loop, and you actually do something else with them, like a heads and tails, I can say how much heads and tails I produced as well.
One question regarding this. Yeah. So I think when we do our production, every recipe is different. So our work orders where you have components like water, yeast, grain, it will be different types of casks because we are blending in. But then the casks will be every time we do the same, like let's say we produce whiskey 99. First time the blend of cask will be different, and then the second time the blend of cask will be different. The two questions that I have over here is that the number of casks that we have put into this IBC will be huge, like maybe 100, 200. Do we have to individually type it, or can we actually import it?
So, counter question before I answer your question on that. Physically, how do you do it? Are you, as you're basically, what you're describing to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is vatting. So you're taking liquid that's already in casks and you're combining it into potentially another liquid. So it might be going into a spirit tank from casks. So you're emptying casks out.
So Claudia will be more,
So I'll show you.
We transfer them from one warehouse to our bottling operator, and then our bottling operator will discard them and put them to vat. They'll do the batting procedure, reduction through to bottle. That's pretty much it in simple terms.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So yes, the answer to your question is you don't have to do it one by one, because I wouldn't expect that to be done in anybody's world. You have two options to do pretty much anything in bottling ERP. Three options. You can do it one by one if you really want to do that. It's your choice. You can import that if somebody else is doing that for you. So if a third party is emptying those casks, they're vatting it, as you said, and then they're bottling it, you can import it. So as part of bottling ERP, you do have the ability to import regauges, samples, vatting, re-racking, or liquid transfers, as I call them, which we'll come to in a minute what that means, for where third parties are doing things for you. That doesn't lose any auditability, so it'll create every single background record automatically as if you did it yourself one by one, but all you're doing is you're importing a simple CSV. What I can do, because I've not actually prepared that side to show you, what I can do is I can send you a couple videos on how that works, the import side. They're 2-3 minutes long. They're all on YouTube, so I can send you them straight after this. That show you basically the spreadsheets and what you fill out. The idea is they're super simple to fill out. You're filling the cask number in. If you're doing a regauge, you're just saying what the ABV is and the LPA is. And that's it.
That'd be perfect. Just sorry, one question quickly. See, because I don't think we covered it last week. When we're doing purchase orders, does that sit in the financial side of things opposed to the actual bottle ERP? So if we were raising a purchase order for a week.
So when we're talking financial and we're talking about ERP, so it's NetSuite as a whole. It's one product that has all of that inside. So your sales, your purchasing, your manufacturing, your demand planning, which we will talk about in a little bit. All of it. Manufacturing, it's all sitting in one side. So I was going to show you a purchase order later on, but I'll just come to it quickly and I'll come back to it in a minute. But if you're buying purchase orders for labels, dye, bottles, whatever it might be, it's still within the system. And when
Okay.
you come to a demand planning point of view, you want to see that so you can feed it into everything. And when we come to WMSCO in a little minute, in a couple of minutes, I'll show you how that works as well.
No, that's great. Thanks.
Cool. But yes, to answer your question, you can do vatting. You can do that. This would be if you're making new make spirit instead, for instance, or you're making gin, or you're making vodka, or any other type of product. If you're doing vatting, works slightly different. I'll show you an example of one in a minute.
Okay.
Any other
Yes.
questions from anybody?
Just a little bit, one more over here. So we are doing, let's say we're taking we're producing case 99,
Yeah.
where all the dry goods goes and whiskey 99 goes. Does it have, and then there's a remnant that is left over from the whiskey. Does it need to go through as a vatting, or it's just one production that captures all the dry goods, and later it captures all the casks that goes into the production, and then automatically a remnant is created?
So just for me to dig into that before I answer that, so it sounds like there might be two separate processes you're doing there. So one which is emptying the casks, and then you're adding more dry goods to it to potentially make it a different liquid before you bottle it.
Yeah.
So there will be two separate processes. One which would be emptying the casks into the vat as such, and then the production order to bottle it, which would have your dry goods on the liquid and etc. on there.
Okay.
Yeah. But the reason, just to clarify, the reason why we've got it is two, so you can track the individual stages, because at each stage you potentially want to track the LPA gain or loss, because if somehow you gain some, lost some, etc., you want to see it. Okay. Right, so I've got my build. As I said, this is super simple. This is if I just did a single stage. I just care about the final product. I don't care about tracking the mashing, the milling, the individual detailed steps. Okay, that's that. What I can do from there is I can do a liquid transfer. So when we're talking about a liquid transfer, we're talking about, in traditional terms, the industry would call it a re-rack. We've called it liquid transfer wherever liquid is moving from one vessel to another. Might be a tanker being emptied into 200 casks, might be one cask going to another cask. Doesn't really matter. If there's liquid moving, it's a liquid transfer to us. But it encompasses all of that. Very similar to before, you have a little guide that you follow that says select the cask, select the container, select what you want to do, and go from there. So if I fill this out, let me just see what my cask was. It was IBC 33. And if I just bring it up, if I can find it. That's not on my list because I haven't finished yet. What I'll do is I'll actually show you an existing one just to make it quicker. So the idea of the liquid transfer, as I said, is to basically move between the two. What you're also saying is the vessel that you're emptying, be it a spirit tank, be it a tanker, is there anything left in there after I've finished with it? Or am I emptying it out? So this is one I've created before that I'll show you just as an idea. The reason I can't show you the last one is because one of the processes is to generate the LPA that is produced, and to calculate that. That is done in the background process. So we can either wait 15 minutes for that to be done, or I can show you an existing one, and we can come back to that in a bit. But the idea of this is you're selecting your vessel, it brings all the information through around the current ABV, the bulk, the LPA. You're then specifying how much you're leaving in there. Is it, as you transfer it, technically becoming a new product for you? So does it become a new product because you're emptying it into potentially a different wood type? And then the casks or containers that you're emptying it into. And this is where it gets slightly different than you're probably expecting. So you can manually do this one by one. As I mentioned, you can import this as well if you wanted to, or you can do this through WMSCO as well. So if I actually just take a side step, and I'm going to show you WMSCO. I don't know if anybody showed you this on Friday or not. WMSCO.
No, we didn't see it on Friday.
Cool. So WMSCO is our handheld solution. It's the mobile version of NetSuite and Bot ERP that allows you to do your warehouse management, your production management, etc. I've not got everything activated, but enough to just show you a couple of ideas of what it is. And the idea is it works on any type of device, iPhone, Android, doesn't really matter what it is, it'll work on there because it's a web address, it's not an app as such. Every user is given their login so that you can track basically what each individual user does. so you don't lose any of that auditability of NetSuite itself. And you have things around picking orders, so sales order picking for work orders. So if you're doing bottling, picking the bottles, picking the labels, picking any dry goods, you can do single order picking. So just take a single sales order, pick it, take multiple purchase sales orders and one item across multiple purchase sales orders and pick those. And then you have the ability, depending on how your setup is, to stage it. So put it into a pack stage, and then somebody packs it, and then you ship it and have a multi-stage process off the back of that. Similarly, you have the ability to do on the receiving side, so transfer orders between sites, purchase orders as well as cask management and spirit production sides. There are other elements around bin transfers, so moving it from potentially pallet to pallet locations, pick locations, wherever it might be, as well as transferring it between different locations and adjustments. Very similar to how NetSuite works, it's all based on a role and permission basis. So based on the role the person is given, based on the permissions that role has, will depend on what they can and can't do within Domesco itself as well. One key thing to note, it's licenseless, so you can have as many people as you want on here. They will all get their individual logins, so you can still track them. You don't pay any more for 100 users compared to 5 users. It doesn't matter as such. Yeah. If I just show you a couple of things before we go back to our liquid transfer, simple things like I can scan, if I was scanning a barcode for an item, it's then said it's okay, it's whiskey 99. I can then just have a look at the information. I've got an image, I've got the stock information. If this item was using bins, it would break it down by bin, so I could see where this is located, or I can see more information depending on what I do, and this is all customizable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this liquid transfer that we have, so liquid transfer 85 on Domesco, and then we'll take it from there. So if I go to cask management and go to liquid transfer, I can see my liquid transfer 85 on there. To the handheld user, this could be one person doing this, could be multiple people doing this, it doesn't really matter. It's showing me the overarching information, and it's then showing me, okay, these are the vessels that have already been filled as such. I can then pick another vessel, scan it, or in my case, pick it from my empty cask list, and then search that. So this is where the barcodes become useful. That's then going to find that information. Okay, this is a capacity of 40 litres is what we said. I can then say how many litres I've filled it up with. That'll calculate the LPA, and I can submit that. And then all I'm doing is basically scanning the asset I'm putting into, putting how much I've put into it, and moving next. And as I make those changes, if I refresh this page, you'll see that that's now been added to 14 has now been added at the values that I've put on there. Oh. So 1 sec. There you go. So it's all live and up to date both ways. So people on handheld are seeing live information. On NetSuite, you're seeing live information. Let's say I'm happy with this. I'm now confirming it is completed. I can confirm it's completed, get asked if I'm sure. That's now marked as completed on the handheld. Now that's gone. There's no other ones available. If I refresh this, warehouse has confirmed it as completed. And then I can, from a management point of view, I can make sure I'm happy with it. Once I'm happy with it, I can go through and mark it as completed. When I mark it as completed or approved, it'll then basically notify me that this is the gain and loss of the LPA. I can put in the fill date just to confirm it, put any notes in that I need to, and save it down. That's then going to move the actual liquid in the system from that one vessel to the multiple vessels and give you that history as well. What it'll also do is, if it needs to, it'll create parcels for each one as well. So it'll group them by the cask type and the wood type as well, and give you a parcel pair. So that's how you would, in essence, if you're keeping it as simple as possible, make a work order for spirit, then transfer it into multiple vessels. 2-stage process, one for the actual spirit production, one for the vessel transfer itself.
No, that'd be great. That would be great for when we have our warehouse operational, etc. Sort of in the meantime, we are using third parties to facilitate this. So I presume there's a way of just being able to override doing the WMS Go side of things and just doing it purely on the website.
Yeah, and that's it. So what we've done is we've given you the ability to do things multiple different ways, because like yourselves, there are many distilleries out there that maybe do distill some inside, do third party, or do a mix, or do one or the other. And that's why we've got the ability for you to import information as well. So you have the ability, as I said, in this account, I think I've got set up just for liquid transfer, samples, regauges, etc., vatting, and all those other options are available. And all you're doing is you're filling in basically a template that then in the background will automatically create the liquid transfer record for you. It'll automatically fill in the vessel lines for you. So you still get the history of everything, but you're not having to manually do it. I'll send you, what I'll do to make it easier, because I haven't set up the template right now, I'll send you some videos of me running that process so you can see how it works. I've got examples where a couple of other customers asked for examples as well of a tanker being emptied into like 150 containers. How does that work? Moving small amount of liquid from one to another, etc. It shows you all that information as well. So I'll show you, I'll send those small videos to you guys so you can have a look at that. What I'll also do is just link you to the playlist so you can see some of the other areas that I've recorded as well.
Cheers, thank you.
Any other questions on this side before I just show you some more of Domestico?
No other questions from this side in terms of spirit. I don't know if you have questions about anything.
No, I think I'm okay just now, thanks.
Cool. Okay, so just briefly, Blue Peter style, I have a different work order I've created in the past, which again, similar product, same sort of process, but it's going to be using the more complex mashing, milling stage, etc. I appreciate you're not doing it fully now, but just give you an idea of how it might work. If I go back to Domestico and go to Spirit Production, depending on how much I've messed with this, it should just have my one work order. So then it should select it. There we go. So that selected that work order at the top, and it's telling me it's my first mill. I can then fill in the information I want to, and the information that's shown to me to be filled in is completely configurable. This is based off of what I've set up as an example. I can have more, I can have less. If I don't want to really track the start and end times, I don't have to. If I don't want to track the flour, the grist, the husk for some reason, I don't have to. It's your choice what you do and don't track. But the idea is people can then live fill that information in as they need to, fill in any notes, and as they do that, they click save, and that then goes back to the system and puts that information in. So if we just give that a second, that's that save. If I refresh this, what we'll see is the milling will change to in progress because it's now started. Someone's marked it as started. So that's now gone to in progress. And then under my spirit production, which shows me my more detailed, it's generated automatically a record for that information. So I can now go through and I can finish it. Let's just say I finished it. Just going to put some values in. Too much. And then if I want to put any notes in. Once I'm happy with that, it's then going to save that down, just like before. But because it knows I've completed the stage at this point, based on my configuration, I now have a choice to go, am I doing another milling for this production of spirit, or have I done my milling stage? If I say I'm going to do a second mill, that's going to go to it. If I just go back to NetSuite and refresh, all this information is going back into the system live as people are doing it. So I can now see all that information, the start and end time, all that information, but also who did it is automatically tracked. And if I need to, based on my manager position, my approval levels, whatever it might be, I can dig into it and I can go, well, this doesn't look right. Well, who did it? Or actually, somebody's made a mistake. I want to reopen it. I can reopen it as well and allow them to change their mistake. Or alternatively, like I've said, I'm going to do a second mill. Well, now it's a second mill. It's telling me it's the second mill at the top. Fill in the same information, or I did it by accident. I can mark it as completed and then go from there. That's now the milling done. If I go back to NetSuite, refresh that. And the idea would you would see a dashboard basically of how this is going instead of me, as I'm showing you now, clicking through it. But that's marked the milling is completed. In the background, it's also tagged who's done it. It's just not showing the column. And then I can go to the next stage. So in this case, based on my setup, I can go to the mashing. Again, follow the same process through. This time, again, automatically selected it. This is the information I've said I want to track against the mashing. Go on, for instance. The level of information you track at each stage is completely up to you. What you do and don't track, it's all up to you, is the idea. Oops, closed the wrong tab. Does that hopefully make sense? Any questions on that? Just to show you just an idea of what you would do on that.
Yeah, no, makes sense. It's quite good the sense that we can kind of see what we want to see as well and what we want to track, whether that's down from sort of, not that we'll be doing mashing or milling, but in the scenario of anything else that we do. So
It's
that's
any.
good.
It doesn't have to be mashing and milling. It can be any stage you want. It's completely up to you. Similarly, if you're doing samples and you do want to take sample results, you can do it with that as well. It's fairly flexible, and because we've made it, we can pretty much do anything with it. Is the idea of it. Right. So I'm just going to take a slight deviation. I'll show you this purchase order as well. So I've got a purchase order in the system. 2 items on there that I'm going to receive against this vendor, against that location. Again, I can do it in NetSuite, or I can do it in WMS Go to receiving, for instance, select my item receipt. That'll then show me the purchase orders that are pending receipt. Select my purchase order, and then I'm showing the items. It's all on the handheld itself. There's no need for me to go into NetSuite to do any of this. From there, it's going to be, okay, what am I receiving? Where am I receiving it? Based on the type of product, it'll ask you more information. So because this is a simple product that just uses a bin, it's just asking me for a bin. If it was a batch product, it'd ask me for the batch. If it was grain, for instance, it would ask me for the AYS. If it was something else, it would ask me the relevant information. It's all about what you want to track. Again, all configurable. But in this case, because it's a bin, it's showing me the options of bins. I'm just going to say it's going to go into that one. I'm going to receive all 5. That's fine. I can then stop there and say that's all I'm receiving, or I'm going to receive more. But as it's doing that, it's going to update this list. Now my die is gone. And in NetSuite, again, just like before, it's automatically generating records. It's automatically saying who's done it, how much they've done, what was the original quantity, how much was supposed to be done. So you're not questioning things if you're not needing to, but if you need to, you have the information available to you. Now, if I finish this off completely, select same bin, just say I'm going to receive all 1,000, receive them. If I want to put any notes against it, I can do, or I can just say I'm happy with it, complete it. That's then going to push those receipts that I've now logged, and it's going to push it into NetSuite. And on the purchase order itself, if I refresh this, if I've given it enough time, I've not yet, what it'll do is it will receive them in theory. Yeah, there you go. So it's now received them in, and if I wanted to, I could go through and I could look at the detail of the background record it's done in the system if I wanted to as well. So if there's any variations, you can see that, gives a confirmation back to the user. They can then go straight through and start another task, whatever they might want to do as well. So the idea, as I mentioned, of WMS Go is to be fairly flexible, give the ability for the warehouse users, the distillery users to do functionality on the go without having to be logged into NetSuite, but then get the real-time information both ways themselves. Is there any questions on anything I've shown you so far before we talk about demand planning?
No, not yet.
No.
No questions.
I don't think so. I'm assuming just based on the using the WS Go in the warehouse, if that's on a sort of ATEX rated handheld device, you need either Wi-Fi signal or a mobile phone signal or something for that to be working.
You do, yeah. So you need Wi-Fi or mobile. It doesn't need to be a great signal at all.
Okay.
It is very minimal information. It needs to pass between the two. And what it will do is, let's say you are in the middle of production and you haven't clicked save in a while or wherever, and you lose internet. You're not losing that. You're not losing that information. It stores it locally on the device until it gets internet again, and then it'll push it back up. Yeah.
Good to know. I'm just conscious Cask warehousing sometimes, especially with all the legacy signals, can be a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's perfectly fine with all that. It tries to store it locally so that you can push it so you don't lose anything. Or, as I quickly showed you down the receipt side, it does a middle stage so that even if somebody does move off, you can still see that information in between. So you're always having that there. Okay, MRP. So there was a point that I was told about MRP that you might want to cover MRP in a bit more detail. Is there any specific questions that you had, or is it just generally MRP? How much was shown to you on Fridays? Wasn't there? Sorry, so I'm not aware how much was shown you.
Well, on Friday we didn't really see much MRP at all. Ewan basically covers all of that, so I think we were just waiting until the relevant people could see it without having to pass on the info.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't on the call on Friday anyway, so I think if you could just kind of run through it
the whole
from the
thing,
start, and if anything comes up, I'll just I'll give you a shout.
Perfect. No worries. So there's 2 scenarios for MRP that you could. It depends how you want to do it. So for new make spirit, for instance, you plan to capacity. So how much can you produce? For instance, for bottling and things like that, you're applying to a forecast or to demand instead, right? The example I'm going to show you is planning to a demand, but it works similarly for capacity. Doesn't matter as such, but similar process. So I've got my whiskey 99 bottled, which is just a bottled version of my liquid once it's aged. On this item record, it's a lot numbered item, and it's an assembly, so it's something we produce because it's an assembly, and it's batch controlled because it's lot numbered. And because it's the final product, we're using units of measure to say, well, we sell it in cases of 6, we make it in individual bottles. You could say you make it in cases of 6 as well if you want to, or vice versa. And that just allows you to sell it in multiple different ways. And then we've got different barcodes that the system can generate for you around UPC, case, etc., that you can then use to scan on the handheld. Some of this information isn't relevant, but if you want me to cover it, I will do, but I'll just skip over it for now. In terms of the product itself, because it's a product that we produce, it has a bill of material, it has a recipe, content to it. So if I open it up, yeah, go for it.
Sorry, just another one. Regarding the barcode, can it store 2 barcodes? Oh, it's the UPC and the case barcode. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's what I saw.
Cool. And you can get labels for both. So when you go to the print screen, it says which barcode you want to print. So because it's got a recipe, this is the recipe itself for my whiskey 99. My whiskey, well, it's got the wrong name. It's supposed to say 99 bottled. These are the products that I've got in there. Each individual one of these is a product in its own right, where we're tracking the stock, we're tracking the supply, we're tracking the price, we're tracking everything about that product as well in its entire history, whatever it might be. Yeah. So for instance, if I go to this is a inventory item, so it's just something we buy in. Against this product again, it's got barcodes, it's got various different elements. The key thing to note is if I scroll down, right at the bottom is this section here. How are we buying it, manufacturing it, plan to use it, for instance. So in this case, because it's a bought product, we've said we buy it based off it's an inventory item, and we said anticipated is a lead time of 14 days to buy this product in. That's what we think. We can also get the system to automatically calculate it as well if we need to, or we can just put it in ourselves. And if you get the system to automatically calculate it, you normally need about 12 months history, but then it will start learning your vendors' patterns based on how often they are hitting their targets. And then it can give you a risk factor to say, okay, well, they hit their target 70% of the time, 20% of the time. So you said 14 days, we think 17 days instead. So override yours. Worst case.
So it needs about 12 months of historic data to start calculating that, but we can effectively use that to track supplier performance as well then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what it'll give you is so supplier performance can be tracked straight away. As soon as you get 2 purchase orders in, it has something to compare against.
Yep.
For the actual automation to update your lead time accurately, you can do it straight away, but I always say 12 months because it has enough history then to be a bit more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
To get automatically do your lead times, to do other elements as well, like your safety stock levels, then you need about 12 months history, so it learns a bit more about your business.
Okay.
So that's one thing. So I've got my lead time there. If I go back to my other product, my whiskey 99 bottled, and I scroll down, similarly, I would set lead times to say how long it takes to produce it. But I can also go a bit further. I can say, okay, how do we produce it? Do we just produce it as much as we need, or do we produce a certain fixed amount every time? So in this case, whenever we're producing it, we produce 200 bottles in one go. One work order, one shift, however you want to define it, will produce 200 bottles. You can also have it as a multiple. We produce 2 in batches of 200. So if I need 550, make 600 instead. Tell me to make 600 instead. There's lots of variation on that.
And will the system, once it's kind of learned, your forecasting, your demand requirements, is it able to make, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, suggestions based on what it thinks you'll need to cover X amount of stock? Yeah.
Yes. So I'll show you some of that right now, actually. So the bit I've shown you so far is the standard static information. Once you've set it up, you kind of forget about it until the system's got enough history, and then you go, now auto-calculate it for me where I'm comfortable to do it, kind of thing. This next bit is, as you said, your forecast. In NetSuite, it's an item demand plan. It can be used as a forecast itself, or it can be used as a capacity, depending on what you're trying to do. But if I take that whiskey 99 bottled as an example, I've done 2 things with this. So first off, I've said, okay, I'm doing whiskey 99. bottled and producing it in individual bottles. As I mentioned, you could do cases of 6, 12, whatever you want to do. I've also said I'm forecasting on a monthly basis. I can go down to day, weekly if I want to, but just for simplicity's sake, I've said monthly. Ignore this bit, I ignore this bit, we'll come back to that in a second, but this bit here, the quantity, this is what I've manually put in my forecast. So to keep it simple, I've said 5,000. If I'm doing it weekly, daily, I can import this as well, and there's no reason why you can't keep reforecasting. So I've said 5,000, it's now 7,000, whatever it might be. There's dips and troughs as you go. And you can import it if you need to, and you can go as far forward as you want to. What you can also do is what I've done in this is you can get the system to calculate it for you once it's got a bit of history. And I'll clarify that in a second. But what you can do, as I mentioned, is get the system to generate it. So I've said look at the past 12 months and project 12 months forward. So look at 12 months history and project 12 months forward. Tell me what you think I should be forecasting. And this is based on it being in my demo account. This is what it thinks I should be forecasting for. So I can compare the system's forecast to my forecast. And when it's generating, I have the option to say, take your forecast or take my forecast, or give me both. So I have the ability to compare. So I've said 5,000 while the system thinks 237. Bit of a difference, but you get the idea. And when you're talking about automated generation of the demand plans and getting it to calculate, it's this screen itself. If I just
So we could also use that previous screen that you just showed there to track our forecasting accuracy as well.
Yeah. And that's the idea kind of thing, is you start tracking how good you are with it. And the key thing to know is if I go back to my item, if let's say you make a new product, you don't want to wait a year for enough history to build up for it to then be able to do everything you want to do. There is this alternative source item field, so you can look at a different item to be the basis for its history instead. So it's a kind of a one-off 12 months thing that once you've got 12 months, you've got 12 months going forward for everything, including new items, because you can pick a different item to be its history.
Okay.
Temporarily, until it gets enough of its own.
Mm.
But in terms of the forecast, there's 4 different methods you can use. The linear regression, just straight line, moving average of how it moves up. Using the sales forecast, so that would be if you're using the CRM processing. NetSuite's the opportunities, the op quotes process, and then you can use seasonality. So if you do have seasonal trends, it'll try and do that. You can also then put uplifts in those trends as well if you need to. And then you're basically just saying how far forward, how far back do you want to look, and that's it. That just goes through and generates it for you automatically, giving you goes up a demand plan that you can either override or you can accept, depending on what you want to do. But that's the first stage of the process. That's my forecast as such, right? If I go to, this one. So next we're defining basically how do I want it to work? What do I actually want to do with that information? Because that's great and all. I've got my item information to say how I build it, what sort of model do I build it in, how long it generally takes. I've got my demand plan, but they're not linked together. The links between the two are not done. The actual planning isn't done yet. So what you have is a supply plan definition. And what you're basically defining is how do you want this to work in a bit more detail. So for this location, because I say I produce that distillation plan, do I just want to use those demand plans that I've created as my forecast? Do I just want to use actual sales orders in the system? Or do I want to use both? And then do an additive or a consumption. So for instance, if I've got a sales order for 300, do I want to add on to my demand? Or do I want to take that away so that if I've got a forecast of 500, I've got a sales order for 300, it's still a total demand of 500, not 800. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that gives you the ability to basically pick and choose. But what I also have the ability to do is, and it very much depends how complex you go. If you have demand in other sectors, so in this example, this was actually created like a visitor center. So we produce all our liquid in one location or our bottling in one location, depending on what you're doing. But actually, we want to forecast at the location level. So we want to forecast for our visitor center separate to our bulk or our wholesale. But when we're actually producing, it needs to take into account both. But our visitor center is a physical different location. So when it generates that, it needs to transfer it. So we're making our distribution network as well to say, how do the different locations in our business work together? Who supplies who? If it takes a certain amount of time to get between the two different locations, what does it take? And what it'll do is it'll generate transfer orders, so requests to move stock between the two once they're built as well. So the level of detail you go to really depends on how far you want to take it. Does that make sense so far? Any questions on anything I've gone through?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense so far.
Cool. Right. All I've gone through leads you to one screen, a planning workbench. The workbench is, I'm not clicking on it yet. The workbench is your overarching screen that shows you your supply, it shows you your demand, it shows you what's actually happening, and it tells you if you've got a problem as well. So as I mentioned, this is the workbench itself. It's quite busy to start with because I've got quite a lot of different products on, depending on who I'm demoing to. But just as an idea, if I just filter it down to my whiskey item, spell, there you go, helps if I could spell. I can see my whiskey bottled item there. I can see the components for each one. At the item level, I can see how much I've got on hand. I can see, well, there's 7 demand sources for it, but there's also 109 sources of supply where I'm going to get supply. I can also see just from a graph level, same sort of metric, day, week, or month, what is causing it to happen, what is causing those supplies, what is causing those demands in general. So I can see my forecast per month. If I had any sales orders and I was consuming them, I would see my sales orders. If I had any movements between locations, so it takes into account stuff that's outside your forecast as well. So stuff that's actually happening in your business, not just your forecast. It's then basically giving me, okay, have I got any production currently? Have I got any way to bring in stock currently? No. Okay, if we did nothing, based on my 9,000 stock, this would be my anticipated stock levels as I go. I've also got a safety stock level of 500 in stock, no matter what. What that then does is it goes, okay, well, to deal with this is what you need to do. You need to produce 1,600 bottles in April. You need to produce 5,000 there, and blah, 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 for instance, to deal with this. And that's at a high level. I can also then go into the detail. I can click on my demand. I can click on the little pegging option, which basically says, what does this cause? So I can see my demand plan for April of 5,000. I can then open it up and go, what have you caused to happen? Well, I've got enough stock of whiskey 99 bottled, anticipated stock for 3,500 at that point, but I've not got enough for everything. So it's suggesting, because I produce in 200s for each one, these several work orders to be reduced, and then the last one is going to take 42 out of the 200 that it's going to make for this request. But I can keep going into the level of detail I want to, because each work order has a recipe, and that recipe might be multi-level deep, or it might not be, or I might actually, as in this case, not have enough stock potentially by the time I get there. So it's suggesting a purchase order as well to be generated. So in this case, I've got enough UK duty labels for everything, but actually I'm going to be missing for this order 56. And it's suggesting a total order of 556, and for this one purchase order to take 56 from that purchase order as well. So it gives you not just work orders, but your purchase orders as well. And if we look at it in a slightly different way, if I just...
And will it flag those requirements elsewhere on the dashboard? You know, will it?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll come back to that point in a second. Just bear with me on that one, and I'll show you how that works. So I can also look at it a different way. If I go to that duty label and I look at that purchase order, I can view it the other way and see, okay, this purchase order, what are you going to be supplying? Well, your purchase order of 5,500 in this case is going to supply all of these individual work orders. But then what are these work orders coming from? Well, that demand plan. Oh, that demand plan, that sales order, X, Y, and Z. Basically click through. And each one of these is a hyperlink to those relevant sources. So the level of detail you want is there. It depends how far you want to take it, is the idea. In terms of dashboard elements, dashboard alerts and things like that, yes, you can have alerts to your dashboard, but there are other ways of dealing with it as well. Let's take an issue. We haven't ordered a purchase order in time, right? I don't remember to do it. I was on holiday, whatever happened, right? I've got a problem. So in this case, 96 GNS has a problem. How do I know? It's got an exception, it's got an action to deal with. Let's have a look at the exception. So, well, it's telling me that I haven't got enough time to bring this purchase order in now because of what I've done. I've not ordered it enough time. And then I can look at the action. What does it suggest I do? Raise this purchase order as it's too close to its lead time. I haven't refreshed this since February, apparently, but you get the idea, hopefully. So that it not only tells you where there's a problem, it also suggests the solution. But what's going to happen is, as soon as I generate that purchase order has a date that is now 2 weeks past when it should have been. It's now going to tell me I'm going to have a lot more exceptions next time I come look to the screen, because all those work orders, now we're not going to have enough stock in time. So I've got a problem, a knock-on effect problem. Okay. But what I'm doing is I'm taking that information, I am also releasing that information, so I can not only, let me just filter this down. I can basically say, okay, this is suggesting these purchase orders. Yeah, I'm happy with them, mark them all, release them. That does not create the purchase order. That releases them for consideration only. What you do is you take that information and you have 3 screens. You have the order items, the master create work order, and the replenish by transfer order. That one's for purchase orders, that's for work orders, that's for stock movements between different locations. If we have a look at all 3, the third one actually don't have anything on. So this screen basically allows me to say, okay, based on the orders that I've said, the purchase orders I've released for consideration, what should I actually order? So I've released one for UK labels, based on the MRP engine, it said I should be ordering 5,500, and I can see my current stock levels. I can go, actually, no, I'm just going to order 6,000. Or I'm going to 7,000. You always have the final say over it. It doesn't generate transactions without your say so. Or actually, if I move this back, I think I have, yeah, I've got more. I'm going to release these 2 at the same time and consolidate the order. I'm super late on that one, and that's early. I'm just going to bring that one forward. I'm going to order them together, and it can consolidate both into one purchase order instead of 2. So you have the availability to basically pick and choose how you want to. And as you're changing it, you have your rates that will get automatically updated based on the rate cards that you basically set up on the system. And that generates a purchase order. What you do with that purchase order is up to you. Do you email it to the vendor? Does it automatically get emailed? Does it go to an approval process? It's all standard NetSuite after that. What you want to do. Similarly, on the work order side, you can, if I just go push this back a bit. Yeah, there you go. I can choose what work orders I want to generate. Okay, well, it says 500 there. I'm going to make 800. And I'm not going to raise this one. I'm not going to raise that one. I'm just going to raise one big one instead. I have the ability to pick and choose as I want. You always have the final say. And if you're ever unsure about why it's telling you something, you got these hyperlinks to tell you, to take you back to the plan, to tell you why this has happened. Where has this come from? So the flexibility, as I said, is there. It just depends how you want to take it. The entire MRP solution as a whole, it does a lot, but the level of information you put in is minimal to start with. You can just start with simple lead times and nothing else and still get the MRP engine to work. You can start without lead times and just use your manufacturing quantities, minimum order levels with your vendors. The more information you put in, the more intelligent it gets, but you can start with minimal and still get benefits from it. One of the key things to add to the MRP engine that we've put in is our production planner. I don't know if you've seen this or not last week, but I'll show you anyway. So from a work order, a production planning point of view, so your actual spirits for your vatting, whatever it might be, we've created a visual calendar that allows you to basically see that information live. So if I actually just extend this out a bit to a month. So on the left, I've got my different work orders that I'm producing. So is it a vatting? Is it a spirit production? What am I doing, basically? I can then see the work orders on the right side, and we're using colors to basically define if there's an issue or not. Green, all good. Yellow, maybe there's an issue. Red, you're not got enough stock, you've got a problem. I can also open it up. I don't know if I've got, no, these 2 are useless. Let me go back, see if I've got a better example in February. That'll do. So in this case, I'm making some new make. So I've got my 3 items on there. I've got enough components for each one. And the idea is I can basically just drag and drop these to change the start dates, end dates. I can also basically just mimic them on here. I can also, if I'm doing multiple bottlings, for instance, in one day, prioritize vertically if I need to and say that's going to happen first, that's going to happen second. And the idea of this screen is it's an addition to the MRP engine to basically tell you what's actually happening, because I can see the quantity I'm building. I can see how much has been done already. I can put any notes in there. I can see notes in there. So I'm getting a bit more of a live update. And as I change stuff on here, it's all local until I click save. But once I click save, when I run my MRP engine next time, those changes are going to take into effect. So now my purchase order that I ordered is now late because my work orders have been pulled forward. So there's always a cause and effect because you're all working in one system. Similarly, if you've got a purchase order that was supposed to come in today, well, now you know it's not coming in for 2 weeks. You change the expected receipt date, everything has a knock-on effect to each other. Overall.
One question regarding this. So we had this first stage where each product has its forecasted sales.
Mhm.
I think a few pages back.
Yeah, the item
Can
demand
we,
plan, yeah.
yeah, item demand plan. Can we have this included over here? So let's say we have whiskey 99, we are producing on week yeah, 12th of Wednesday.
Mhm.
Until then, we have at least like 50 cases remaining because we have the monthly sales data. And if you
Mhm.
push it by another 1-2 weeks, we are out of stock. We need to produce on that. Can we have that information in this page?
So it doesn't show on here. That's the point of the MRP workbook.
Okay.
That would show you on there that actually you haven't produced enough or you're not going to produce enough. Because let's say the system said you were supposed to produce 100 bottles last week, you produced
Yeah.
50 for whatever reason. Well, it knows you've only got 50 on stock. So you've got a
Okay.
problem. It doesn't show you
So
currently on here though, no.
yeah. Okay, because I'm trying to understand if you want to have a lot of products together,
Mhm.
because that page was only for one page, one product.
Mhm.
And if you want to see a lot of products together with their demand and when we will run out on stock, is there a page for that?
So the idea of that screen, so I think close it now. Yeah, there you go. So yes, there's a lot of products on here, but it depends how you want to see this information. Because if there are shared products between the two, or let's say you got 5 different product lines and there are shared subcomponents, it's not going to show you that subcomponent 5 times. It's going to show you once.
No, I mean, so over here we need to click on each individual product to basically see the forecast.
The
I'm trying
forecast of
to
it, yeah.
understand, yeah, forecast. I'm trying to see 5 individual different products
Mhm.
in the same one page.
Right, okay. So there are various reports that you can see that forecast if you want to
Okay.
do forecast vs actual. So if I can remember where to find them, there it is, forecast. So no, that's not the one I'm looking for. There is somewhere I can never remember where it is. So there's two ways of doing it. So there's the forecast against a sales forecast. So people are being given targets, sales team are given targets. You can do against that, which is what these are showing. There's another one, which I can never remember the life of me where it is, which shows you against your demand plans instead. So you can do demand vs actual. I just don't know where it is. Where is it? I can never remember where these are. So you can see your demand vs actual. This is the worst way of doing it, but I can. Let me just talk about this actually before I split it. I don't know how much you went into reports last time, but when you're looking at reports, you have this column option in most things that you can basically pick and choose how you want to see the information. So in this case, it's probably pretty useless. In this example right now, I've got my forecast quantity and I've got my actual as a total. Doesn't mean anything to me. I have the ability to split it by week, month, quarter, year as well. So if I split it by month, for instance, and I just push this back a couple months and do that. Don't know how useful this will be, but there you go. So I can then see my forecast and my actual against my top level components instead, my top level products instead of one by one, depending on how far I've gone with it. So yes is the answer to your question. It just depends how you want to see it. There's lots of different
Okay.
ways. You can
Yeah.
see it in this way. You can also have a graph that shows you it. So you can have a stacked graph which shows you
Yeah.
the forecast to the actual. Really depends how you consume the information, but the information's there to be used.
Okay. And these reports, I mean, if I want to create an inbuilt template, I need to learn HTML, right? Or I
No,
can manually do it.
no,
I
no.
can
You can.
manually put
So
it
yeah. So there's
because
3 ways of reporting in NetSuite. Well, 4 now, but let's talk about 3 to start with. You've got this way, which is your traditional reporting engine.
yeah, yeah.
Really basic in terms of the customizability. I can just go through and customize it. I've got the options available at the bottom left. I can drag and drop stuff on. I can just do
Yeah.
filters. I don't need to know what coding or anything like that.
Okay.
That,
Because yeah, I would like to add the forecast with the depletion.
Mhm.
Forecast with the production, sorry. Then
Yeah.
we have when we will, so one page where I can see everything. Yeah, that will be interesting. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so that's what this would be with slight modification. But what you can also do is if I go to a different report that I have, I call them reports, they are different things, which I'll explain. So this is a report, what we just looked at. What we're looking at now is a save search. So save search is more of a list of information that you have a bit more flexibility on covering. So this save search is my container stock and the general information about them when they were filled, the AYS, the cost per LPA, the total cost, etc. Again, I can edit this search depending on permission. And the UI is slightly different. It's again more drag and droppy. It's more type in what I'm looking for. If I want to, I can do formulas and I can do SQL and I can go very far with it if I really wanted to, or I can keep it super simple. That can give you your forecast report as well. The final way is, well, the second last way, should I say, is analytics. This is taking it a slightly step further. So let me see if I've got, I'll just go with that one for instance. Yeah, it's ordered. A pre-built one. I can very similarly use drag and drop based on the information. I can get it in list view. I can get it in a pivot table. When the pivot table loads, I can get it in a pivot table and I can pick and choose how I want it to work. I can get it in a graph and change how I want the graph to work. I can get these on my dashboard as well. So it kind of is really depending on how do you want to see it. Will depend on how we make it or if it's already there. But the flexibility is there, and all three versions I've shown you can all be added to your dashboard. Everything I've shown you can put on your dashboard, or you can have them emailed to you on a weekly, daily, whatever basis as well if you want to. Okay. The fourth way, which I'm not going to show you today, is the analytics warehouse. So I don't know if anyone's ever encountered business intelligence software before, like Microsoft. I can't remember what the Microsoft one's called, like Click, and there's a Microsoft one, there's a Google one as well. It takes it a bit step further, allows you to do more graphs, it's more visual. NetSuite does have its own as well, so you can use that as well. I haven't got it in this account, but it's called the Analytics Warehouse, which you can then take it a step further. But what that allows you to do is if you do have other data sources, so let's say you have HubSpot for CRM for some reason, or you have a case management system and you want to pull that information into the system, into that one database to look at it all together, you can do that with that solution.
So can this integrate with Power BI then? Because that's the current tool
That's
that
the
we
one
use
I
for
was
business
thinking of.
intelligence.
Power BI
Cool.
was the one I was thinking of.
It can integrate and pull that through.
There
then,
are connectors. There are connectors for it. Yeah. Yeah, there are connectors for Power BI. What I would say is when it comes to a BI tool that you might already be using, as part of any implementation, I always question why do you need it going forward? Is it a historical thing or is it there for a reason in terms of going forward with the extra visibility you'll get? Do you still need it? If you do, fine, there are connectors. If you don't, try and use NetSuite first. And then save yourselves a bit of money by getting rid of it. If you can.
Good thinking. That's always on priority.
Exactly. But that's pretty much everything I had to cover right now. Is there any questions on anything I've gone through? Any other points you want me to talk about? Hopefully I haven't talked too much. You guys.
I just have another one regarding costing. Can we implement standard costing, and can it be automated by product type? So all labels will be, instead of like having every SKU will have a standard costing, which takes a lot of time. So at the earlier start of the year, we're like, okay, all labels will be this category.
So the answer to your question is yes and no. It's a bit of a two-phrased answer. So NetSuite can do standard costing. That's the yes part. The no part is we don't recommend it. Not because standard costing, it doesn't work. It does exactly what you need to do, but we don't think you need it. Every manufacturer thinks they need standard costing to start with until you get NetSuite. So the idea is, with the bottle ERP particularly, because you're making everything in a batch, you're buying stuff in batches, everything is batch level. The costing is actually batch level instead. So your cost is accurate to the batch itself. There's no need to create cost templates, cost routings or anything like that, or cost categories. It's all done at the batch level automatically for you. So you are getting a very accurate cost of your batch already. And that extra step of doing, if you really want to, you can. That's the yes part. We would never recommend it as a starting point because it's normally, you've already getting it anyway. You're getting that level of detail. And because we're using lot numbered, that if I go back to my container stock report, ignore the zeros, my data isn't the best, but gives you that cost per cask, right, per LPA. Or if I want to take it a step further from a sales point of view, I can see my margin as well. Because I've tracked all the costs, I can see my invoice, my sales order, etc., my revenue, what my costs were, my margin, pre and post duty as well. Because the system's calculating it all for me, giving you pretty much near what standard costing gives without any of the admin work of standard costing. And that's why we don't recommend it as a start button.
And from a reporting perspective, if Whiskey 101, we sold 100 cases of 2 different SKU, will it automatically average it, or how does the report?
Per batch.
Per batch, okay.
Everything's done at the batch level. So if you've let's say you make the batch on the 1st of May, or March, should I say, 1st of March, each bottle in there costs £5. Each bottle costs £5, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
If you sell 2 different batches on that sales order, it's 2 different costs potentially that have been attributed. Not an average, it's 2. You still get an average if you're looking. If I go back to the item record, you get an average at the item record level.
Okay. All right.
But you get the actuals at the reporting level.
Okay. It's mostly when we do yearly reporting, so we can't report everything in batch. We need to sum
average
it up
at some and that gives you that ability to do that, because we're still tracking the total value of every batch. We're still getting an average at the overall level. We're also getting it at the individual location level as well. So if you've got different warehouses, the batch cost at each location level on average. So you still have that average cost, but you also have the individual cost if you want to get to the nitty-gritty detail. And what goes into that cost is up to you. Do you put labor into there? Do you put utilities into there? Do you put overheads into there? Or do you just keep it at the components? It's really up to you.
Just a quick one from me, and this may be a fairly basic one for NetSuite, but I've come across other systems that didn't have this capability. If we're creating a work order for Whiskey 99, say, and we know that it needs, this type of specific glass bottle that we have in stock, but that glass bottle is stored across 3 different warehouses. The system can recognize that when drawing down, it's not just drawing it from one location, it's drawing it from a total that is split across 3 different locations.
That's where the distribution resource network comes in. You define your relationship between the multiple locations. So if you don't define that, it's going to do what pretty much probably every other system does. I've got one location, I don't have enough stock in there. What do I do about it? But if you use the distribution resource network, what it will tell you to do is that's where the 3rd screen comes in, the replenish location by transfer order. It'll tell you to move the stock between the locations.
Oh yeah, right, okay.
And you can do that.
Can you plan in sort of lead times in terms of, if I'm transferring from this location, that'll take 5 days or 2 days or?
Yep. So when you're building that, if I go back to this, I think, no, it's not. It's the rug group. You're basically defining what your lead time is there.
Right. Okay. Got you.
It only goes down to days. It doesn't do hours, FYI, but it does. You can still do it. If it's hours, you put 0.
Yes.
So go on.
Yeah. I just want to add to this question. If we are moving the stock from location A to B, the stock has a cost, the movement cost. Does that cost goes back into the cost of goods?
It goes with the product itself. It moves with the product. So depending on the terms you're using. So if I've got any transfer orders in this account. Let's have a look. Okay, now they're done. Let's just have a look at one. So if we open up this transfer order, which apparently did in the start of the year, for Whiskey 1 apparently, that moved. So what you're basically doing, what we always recommend is, unless there's a specific reason to, you use the item cost as the transfer cost. Unless there's a markup being produced or something like that, you use the item cost as the markup cost, as the actual trust. And then when you're moving it, you're moving the valuation, the ownership from one to another. There is no actual hit to the accounts as such, because it's just a transfer of goods from one to the other. In essence, it's just changing the location it's attributed to. But when you look at the GL impact, you'll see the breakdown of it, and it goes into the asset account, the in-transit account, sorry, while it's moving.
Cost of sales. Okay.
And you'll be able to track that as well going forward. So then on the receipt side, which on this one hasn't done, you'll then reverse it.
Since it's not, it's not linked directly to the product, it's like as a cost of sales. So I get my costing fairly 2-3 weeks after the product has been moved. invoicing takes time. Can I add this costing much later and still the overall impact gets recorded?
So if correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about landed costs potentially, additional costs as part of the transfer.
Yeah.
So yes, is the general idea. So you can do it on purchase orders, you can do on receipt on transfer orders as well. So on the receipt, you'd have, I don't know if I've got one. Yeah, if I go back to this purchase order that we were looking at before, if I go to the receipt, I'll be able to show you. So if we just give us a second to think about it, there we go. So what you have is you have this landed cost tab, and in this account it's a very simple setup. I've set up 2 cost categories for duty and freight, but it could be pretty much anything. I can track it at the overall transaction level as I'm doing it here, or I have the ability to do it per individual item line, similar to the transfer order. And these costs can be added later, and then it will update automatically.
Oh,
what you can
that's good.
also do is link it to an actual bill. So if you've got a bill come in, you can go to the receipt and go, okay, or you can do it on the bill, depending which way you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. It'll do it the same way. I can go into here and I can go, okay, it's either manual or it's another transaction that's given it, and I select my transaction. And then I'm picking basically how do I want that cost to be attributed across the products.
Yeah. Okay.
And that just rolls up
Alright.
as part of the cost.
And I can save the bill on the system itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean by the PDF, by bill, I mean the PDF.
Yeah. So
Alright,
yeah, the
perfect.
PDF.
Yeah.
So if I go back to the purchase order, I don't think I've got it in this account. Nope, I don't. So what you would normally see is a drag and drop section here,
Okay.
where you can drag and drop any file on any record, and then what you would have is under the communication tab, there's this file section. You'll see all your files there on that.
Perfect.
You do also have sticky notes, just traditional sticky notes and other things like that as well, if you really wanted to.
Perfect.
Any other questions from anybody on anything I've covered or anything I've not covered?
No, nothing at the moment.
Okay.
There's nothing else that's immediately springing to mind. You did, apologies, I think you did mention this earlier, but just double checking, the system can set, approvals for POs, in terms of if there's a monetary value you're exceeding or things like that, yeah.
You can do it at multiple levels. You can do either just basic monetary value. You can do it also on like a cost center. So if you've got a budget per cost center kind of thing, you can do it on a cost center. Similarly, on the sales side, you can do it. So if you're taking pro forma payments, you can do it with pro forma and also credit limit. So if you offer both, so you do credit limits, but you do pro forma, you have an approval process built in, which allows you to make sure you pay the deposit before you fulfill. But also, if they breach their credit limit, finance have to approve it first, or they have to say they're okay with it, or there's a certain tolerance that's allowed. That's all standard as part of all ERP, both sides.
Okay.
The other thing to note is you can do the approvals through your phone. So you get an email, you have the approve and reject link on your email. So you don't have to go into NetSuite. We try and stop you going into NetSuite if you don't need to.
Perfect.
Any other questions from anybody? Nope. Perfect. All right. This session is recorded, so if there's anybody else that needs to look at it, feel free to share. What I'll do is I will discuss with Rob. I think he's unavailable right now, but I'll discuss with Rob and I'll get those extra links for those short videos sent across to you guys. And then we'll
Sorry,
go from
just
there.
one small question.
Yeah, go
I
for
just
it.
got it. Yeah. If our customer decides to place an order, can they have access to a certain kind of products and be like, okay, I need this 100 cases, 10 cases from this, and it automatically pulls in, or is it something that we still need to do it manually?
So there is a functionality piece that called the customer center. So very much like you guys would have access, warehouse people have their access. Customers can have access to your system as well. It doesn't cost more licenses. It's just giving them access to your account. It's a very limited access, but if you give the ability to, they can place orders, or they can look at their invoices they need to pay and make a payment. They can download their own statements. They can also raise support tickets. So if they have an issue, they can raise support tickets, see their existing support tickets. It's very much like a customer portal with a little bit of extra stuff on there.
Perfect.
And that's all included. Vendors also have one. If you ever need vendors to have access for some reason, they can update their purchase orders with expected receipt dates, etc. as well if you need to.
Okay.
That's
Good to
okay.
know.
Cool. Any other questions before we sign off? Cool. All right. Well, it was nice to meet you all. Apologies for missing Friday. I had a small emergency come up. But yeah, I will look forward to speaking to you guys in the future.
That's great. Thank you for your time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.